Hello again, everyone, and welcome to another of my interviews. And I'm delighted this evening to welcome That Joe Payne. Joe is a singer-songwriter with a theatrical side, who was previously in the progressive rock band the Enid, and has now gone solo. Joe also has performed with members of Dream Theatre, which I think everybody knows of, and their wonderful work. And has just produced the delightful solo album Bread and Circuses, which I downloaded in the past week, and I listened to it again this week, and I gained on every song I gained something new. So it's been a wonderful experience. Good evening, Joe. Thank you for joining me this Tuesday evening. My first question to you is very simply, why that Joe Payne?
I get that one a lot.
Yes, I'm sorry about that.
A lot.
that, yes.
Well, Lawrence, when I first started out in music, I never really created a stage name for myself. I was always a singer in a band, and so when it came to being talked about in the press or anything, people would say Joe Payne from the Enid, for example. And so I was just Joe Payne, but you could always work out which Joe Payne because of whatever act I was working with. And then when it came to going solo, I needed a way to differentiate myself from other Joe Paynes, because there's a lot of Joe Payne musicians, believe it or not.
Yeah.
And there was even another one in the prog world as well. So I was just like, well, if I don't do something about that, I thought, well, I can either give myself a completely new name, or I can stick with Joe Payne and add something to it to make sure people find my music or my website or anything that I appear on can also have the tag of That Joe Payne. And so that's now my artist name. I'm That Joe Payne.
It's your USP.
Yeah. If people ask which Joe Payne, you can say That Joe Payne. That's how it is.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. So as I say, I listened to your new album, Bread and Circuses. I listened to it for the second time, and as I say, I really what struck me about it is the sheer diversity. I mean, I know that's kind of a well-worn word at the moment about lots of things, but this album, I've got so many records in the collection. It's got such diversity in it. I mean, the influences that I've had to guess that who inspired you were bands such as individuals such as Freddie Mercury, Mika, the Beatles, a little bit of Jamie Cullum maybe, and even a bit of the old James Bond with the My Heart had a very James Bond sweep to it. So I'll ask you if those bands and musicians are accurate as your influences, and yeah, who inspired you?
I think you'd definitely be right in saying that most of those people have had some serious influence on me. To be honest, the kind of artists that have more of a theatrical flair are the ones that I tend to gravitate towards the most. And I'm not sure if it's so much that I'm influenced by those things, or if it's just what's in my head happens to be a similar wavelength to what might have been in their heads as well. So it's hard to say, because I'm kind of equally influenced by everything. There's nothing that I don't take an interest in apart from football. And but musically, I'm interested in everything equally. But at the same time, because I'm so broadly interested in everything, I'm not necessarily interested in any one thing enough to be like an expert in it. So I would say that is why my music tends to be so eclectic. So you'll get every single album I've ever made has had every single song completely different from the rest, and that resembles kind of how I listen to music anyway. You know, I mean, so even growing up, I wasn't really listening to albums. I was like listening to, now that's what I call music.
Yes. Yes,
And
very
so
much.
I was used to always having this eclectic mix of songs, one after the other, which for anyone that's more genre specific in what they listen to, um, probably wouldn't enjoy that in the way that I do. So, so I love having a playlist that jumps from genre to genre. It keeps it really fresh for me.
It's good for the shuffle as well, isn't it? I mean, people like to shuffle a bit. They don't want to listen to sort of records in the old-fashioned way sometimes, do they? But I think that's why, earlier I said that I think I gained more on a second listening than I did on the first, and I enjoyed it on the first listen. But I think each track, probably more than any other artist I've heard, and as I say, I've got hundreds on my playlist. It's like an adventure that's all contained within itself. The musicianship, the lyrics, you've got very different singing styles depending on the track, which I mean, that's another thing that is very interesting. And and I think that's why it's kind of that's a good thing. Say each listen brings new and wonderful rewards. The next question I was going to ask you, Joe, is I had the great pleasure of enjoying your set at the Soundall Festival in Peterborough a few weeks ago, and it contains a wide variety of artists. Some of them progressive rock, but then there were other artists too, like your good self and the Big Sisters, who sort of bring something new to the festival, and that's what is enjoyable. I think is to see such a wide variety of colourful and entertaining and just unique artists. What would you say is the thing you most enjoy about performing live, and what was the best gig you think you've ever done? What was the most enjoyable one for you?
Ooh, my goodness. Okay. Okay. So, I mean, I'm going to be really honest with you. During the pandemic, or kind of just after the pandemic, I really kind of lost my buzz for performing live. And
Yes.
I became way more at home in the studio, making things and doing the creative side, which was a really weird transition for me because I'd spent my entire life like living for the performances, and so this year I've ended up not actually overcommitting when it comes to live shows because I wanted to take a break from them because I kind of lost I lost my connection with whatever it was that I got joy from it, and so it had kind of become I'd lost all the kind of like nervous energy that gives you that adrenaline rush, you know. So this year I've kind of limited the number of shows I've done, which just means that when I do a show, it feels more special for me, so that I do get more out of it. Otherwise, if I'm just doing show after show, it starts to feel a bit meaningless to me. And I think that's a feeling that will probably change in time. I think I am kind of recovering from what's been a few very stressful years of people adapting post COVID and getting our careers back on track and getting people motivated to going out again to shows, which is something that I definitely think hit the prog audience maybe harder than it did a lot of other genres, just because this happens to be a demographic that wasn't as comfortable with taking risks when it came to like getting out there again, and getting COVID anyway, you know. So I think next year I'm gonna have my buzz back, and I'm gonna want to perform again a lot more. But if you want to know what my favorite show ever was, ooh, a really good question. You know what? I haven't thought about it. I haven't thought about it in a very, very long time. What is my favorite show? I don't know. I can't decide.
That's okay. That's okay. Yeah, you know, yeah, as you say, it was such a disruption, wasn't it? And then, I
Yeah,
mean, obviously, I know from what I do, and that is, ironically, I was, you know, because I like to write it, you know, and that's not too badly affected in terms of the creative process. You haven't got the gigging side of writing, I suppose, in the
yeah,
same way. I mean, it is a little bit sometimes, but yeah, I've spoken to other obviously musicians, and I think that what they seem to have indicated to me is that the lockdown, it kind of, I think the trouble was that people get into a way of being, and then that was such a different way of being, and then having adapted, it's difficult to then adapt back to the old routine because it just wasn't. It wasn't just sort of clicking the fingers, was it?
no,
And going back, and I just mean that in terms of everyday life. I mean, for a yeah, if you're a musician touring, I've heard all sorts of things about the costs and things like that suddenly being potentially higher. Um, so yeah, it must have been a real yeah, must be very difficult to adapt to. But yeah, as you say, so basically you're looking at performing live more next year, and having a bit more momentum is what you're indicating. Is that right?
yeah. I mean, I'm hoping that I get to do some touring, some more touring with Jordan Rudess, because the album we're releasing comes out in September, and it's an amazing album. It's definitely, I would say, it's the best music I've ever had the pleasure of singing. It's not my music; it's his music, but it's really, really, really extraordinary. So that comes out in September. I know that Dream Theatre start their world tour in October. So where he's going to be able to fit in another tour for his own music, I definitely think that's something he wants to do. In fact, I know it's something he wants to do. And fingers crossed, we're going to have some dates for that soon, because I'd just love to get out there and perform this music live, because it's just fabulous.
Yeah, I think that is a collaboration that will be of great interest to a lot of people. Um, now, next question is on a slightly, it's in a it's slightly in the same ballpark, I suppose. Having talked about lockdown, we all know the issues that I think everybody had at some point or the other, even if they didn't think they suffered from mental health issues. You know, it was a very difficult time at times for everybody. You know, no matter how much they think they can cope. And I've seen you discuss these, and you talked about your low point and how it affected you and recovering. Do you think that popular music as an industry gets more support in this area than it used to?
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, I remember when I had my big breakdown, which was back in 2016, so it's 8 years ago, and it was really hard to be honest about what was happening to me, because there was not a conversation happening about it at all. It was this very kind of taboo subject that got swept under the carpet still, and I knew that I needed to put my feelings into my music, and my first album was all about my mental health struggles. But it literally, in the space of like a couple of years, from me getting started on it to actually releasing that music, the conversation in popular culture about mental health had just exploded, and it was like it was almost like I'd timed it perfectly to have like to join in the conversation, for there to be this kind of platform to really talk about what I'd been through and what I was going through, so yeah, that was like really good timing, because it was something I was going to do anyway, but it was really scary at the time. Whereas now we, again, we're still only talking like 4 years later. We're all now so open about it that we've gone from not realizing that anyone would understand what we're going through when we're going through it, to actually knowing that probably almost everyone we meet knows what we're talking about. So it's making sure that people don't feel alone with it. That was always my objective, and I think some of the songs I've written, which in a big way I wrote to help myself to get these feelings out in a cathartic way, but the kind of secondary benefit of it is that it's been beneficial to the listeners as well, because they've found them relatable, and it's just helped them get through difficult patches in their lives. So that's amazing. I'm really, really proud of that.
Yeah, well, yeah, you should be. I mean, I do. They often say that the music kind of hits you first with when you find an artist, and then the lyrics sort of creep in with successive listens. So I definitely got the sense that even on your newest record, that there's definitely that comes up as themes dotted throughout. And yeah, I think you've captured the public mood there, because as I say, I think lockdown was perhaps the turning point, but at least it meant that an industry where people sort of were seen as tortured geniuses, and they don't sort of treat them, don't help them, because that's how they produce their genius. But they could be going through absolute torment, and they're still human beings at the end of the day. They're not just entertainers for everyone's pleasure. So yeah, I think that's very interesting to hear you say all that, because yeah, it's something that I come across that on a literally a daily basis of mental health, people talking about the mental health issues, which certainly wasn't happening in 2016, or even arguably up to the lockdown. I think it was definitely probably a turning point. My next question is the Painkiller Party, which you pointed me at when we were setting up this interview. And you got some wonderful pictures on Facebook about it. You held on Saturday, raised over £600 for the National Autistic Society, which is a wonderful achievement. How did you initially get involved in this venture?
Thank you for that. Yeah, it's the most we've made on one of our raffles, because we do a raffle every year, and we choose a different charity every year. I always choose something that is important to me, close to my heart. So last year we supported Sparkle, which is the UK's biggest transgender organisation. And yeah, this year we decided to support the National Autistic Society, and it's just a brilliant way to get everybody that's coming to the party really involved, because I've always thought, like, it's great to do these events, but the difference between it just being a gig and actually being a party, or more of a social occasion, you've got to find ways of bringing people together, and there's like having a joint cause is a great way of doing that, and everybody wins by doing it too. So no, there are no losers. It's great.
Absolutely.
So the painkiller parties began life off the back of me starting up a Patreon page, which is very, very important to my work. It's the only way I'm able to really fund what I'm doing at all. It means I can focus full time on my work as an artist rather than like having to have a full-time job, and then treating this as a hobby, because I know I don't think I would do it at all if it wasn't my main focus, because I don't think I'm necessarily focused enough to manage a job and this.
No, it's tough, isn't it? I mean, it's tough to sort everything out, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely a bit away with the fairies, and I remember when I was when I was a little boy, when I was a little boy at school, my teachers used to be really worried about me, because I had a very short attention span, and I would appear to just
Yes.
kind of zone out. And I remember how it, like, time would just pass, and I would have just, like, to everyone else, it would have looked like I was just sitting there staring at the page, but actually I was just in my head being creative, just imagining like an idea, just processing an idea around, which is exactly what I do when I'm writing, when I write songs. That's how it all starts. Just now I have a far more kind of constructive way of dealing with it, to make sure it actually becomes something worthwhile.
No, that makes complete sense to me. I mean, I was the same. It was kind of more sort of literary things with me. But yeah, as people would go, oh, daydreaming again, but it's, as you say, the problem is it's not something you can sort of say, right, only think these thoughts between this time of the day and that time of the day, or only on this day. It's not how it works. They could come to you in the middle of the night, they could come to you in the middle of the day. No, but thank goodness you've got some of these out on recording for us, because they're little thoughts going round and round that led to something very entertaining.
Yes, thank you.
You're more than welcome, Joe. My final question, we touched on the touring thing earlier, and obviously this is on your page, and I should be putting a link to that, let's say, when the interview goes up, of course. But please tell us where you intend to be performing live for the rest of 2024, Joe. Which bits of the country will you be going to, and roughly when?
Okay, I have 2 big gigs with the band, so I would love to see people at one of those. And the first is at Wokingham Music Festival on Monday, the 26th of August, which is a bank holiday Monday, and we are on the bill just before the headliner, Osric Tentacles. So please do come to that. It's always a lovely summer's day event in the park, and it's like prog all day. You've got the Paradox Twin and Sprig and Mist are there. Amanda Lehman's going to be there, and if you can make that, then wonderful. And if not, or if you'd like to see me twice, I'm going to be doing a very different show with the same band, but I'm going to be doing my Christmas show in London this year, and I haven't managed to get it announced yet, and I will be announcing that very, very soon, so look out for that. But that's going to be in December in London, so look out for it, because the Christmas shows are really fun. I call them the Ding Dong Show, because I've got a Christmas album called Ding Dong.
That sounds like your type of humour.
Yeah, it is.
That's got your stamp on it.
If you want a Christmas album that that works all year round, check out Ding Dong by That Joe Payne.
Yeah, love all that kind of thing. I love that sort of Christmas sort of upbeat stuff. Yeah, I like. Yeah, myself have a look at it. It's very good. One of the best gigs I saw actually was, to my surprise, was a band I hadn't at the time heard of called Mostly Autumn, a progressive rock band. You can't go along and you think, oh, progressive rock band at Christmas. I mean, that's not always. I know there are progressive rock Christmas records, but they don't. For the sort of eggnog and Yuletide sort of good cheer. I mean, you wouldn't necessarily say that sort of a dour prog band would be the obvious one, but it was such fun. It was. They did the Pink Floyd. They did at least an hour of that. They did an hour of their own stuff, and then they did an hour of Christmas stuff at the end. And it was such a, the rapport between the performers and the audience. Perhaps because it was Christmas was particularly great. So
yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Joe. I've thoroughly enjoyed this interview. So I'll be putting links up to your page and to put some information on there. Please like and subscribe, anybody who enjoyed the interview. And as I say, many thanks to Joe for joining me. And see you soon.
See you soon, Lawrence. Thank you so much. Great to talk to you, mate.